All right, we're going to be talking about configurations. My name is Charlie Macleod. This is my friend and colleague, Steve Van Esch. All right, so what is a configuration? It is a new extensibility pattern at 1.4. We like to say that it has all the functionality of an add-in plus the ability to modify some of the startup behavior, such as the title and icon, splash and start page, as well as do customization of the UI at runtime. And we will see examples of all of this. First, by way of a brief orientation, when you install the ArcGIS Pro SDK and you go to the project templates in Visual Studio, you will notice at 1.4 that we have a new template, ArcGIS Pro Managed Configuration. You run that, you will get, stubbed out, a new configuration project. When you compile your configuration, it will generate a Pro config X. It's an archive, same as add-ins are Esri add-in X's, and they have the same X copy or double-click deployment as an add-in. They are deployed to the C user's public documents folder as opposed to the individual users folder. You can have multiple configurations installed on a machine, but only one configuration can be run per Pro instance, so it is a singleton in that regard. The way you specify which configuration you want to run is through a command line argument, /config with that colon, and then the name of the particular configuration. Now let's just go to Visual Studio and take a look at that. Oh, sorry. Sometimes when I escape out of PowerPoint, it actually also escapes out of the projector. All right, so let's go to Visual Studio. All right, so here is that template, new project. You install the Pro SDK, you get this little ArcGIS folder. There's add-ins, and there is the new configuration template. Okay. After you run that, you'll notice in your solution you have a config.daml and a module. That's same as an add-in has, nothing new there. There'll also be this UI folder. In this UI folder are a series of controls. Control that's given to you for your About page, splash screen, and start page. Okay? Simply use these, modify these, or whatever for whatever particular aspect of Pro you're interested in changing. And the way you do it is you override some callbacks in this configuration manager class, and we'll see how to do that. For some examples of some of the kinds of start pages that you can build with the configuration, we have a sample available on our GitHub that I'm showing here. It's called Config WithStartWizard. You can download this. And its start page is actually a gallery of different start pages, okay? In this particular case, I'm showing the stock start page that comes with the template. It shows a list of the recently opened projects that you can pick from. Here's an example of another start page. In this case, we're actually representing the default start page that comes with Pro. This is useful if you want to show the default start page, but you just want to tweak or change some particular aspect of its behavior. You can do a start page that accesses online. So in this case, we want to access project packages that we have available online, or package templates. You can even do web maps. Feature services, any of these you can use to initiate your Pro session. Here's a different kind of start page. In this particular example, let's imagine that our users work in particular areas. In this case, say, counties of California. And we want our start page experience to reflect the areas that they can work in, so they pick a particular county of California to initiate their session. And here's another example. In this case, I have similarly some sort of set of predefined areas I work in, but I've got some branding, got my logo, some sort of color scheme that I've also chosen to implement, okay? So that kind of gives you some ideas of the things that you can do with your start pages. Let's just say that for the purposes of this session, that we work for some kind of fictitious company that has a geocoding workflow. Our users work with addresses or parcel IDs or something of that nature. And so we want to start experience that reflects that kind of geocoding workflow. And we'll see how to kind of build this up as we go. Okay, let's go back to the slides. All right, so first the basics. We'll look at how to override things like the splash, start, and about, name and icon, and then we'll add in some sort of representative functionality reflective of whatever we do with our geocoding workflow. We'll pick it up a notch, and we'll look at some more advanced customizations, getting into the backstage, and then also some sort of streamlining of the ribbon. And then we'll end with some more advanced customizations on top of that, where we're going to conditionally customize the UI based on some aspect of the user who's logging in. So in one particular configuration, we actually want to show a different user interface per user based on some permissions or portal group membership or whatnot. And then we'll talk about some another form of customization, command filters. So we're going to go through all of this. All right, basics first. After you run that configuration manager template in your DAML, it will generate for you this configuration element. In the configuration element, it specifies the name of your configuration, and then the child element, configuration manager, that points to the code behind file that contains the implementation of that configuration manager. There are a set of overrides that you implement for each aspect of Pro that you want to override. Splash, start, about page, for example. They're all optional. You don't want to override the splash screen? Don't implement the override. If it's there, simply comment it out or return null or delete it. Similarly, start, about, and so on and so forth. So all of the overrides are optional. All right, splash screen first. Probably the easiest thing to do if you want to change the splash screen is use the template we give you and just change that. If you want to do it from scratch, be sure to inherit from system.windows.window. You want a width-height ratio of 2:1. One thing to be aware of that you don't actually have to consider as add-in developers, you are involved super early on in the startup sequence of Pro. In actual fact, some of the callbacks you get them so early that none of the modules have been loaded. And we'll talk a little bit about that as we go. When you get the splash screen, none of the Pro resources have been loaded, so don't reference any styles of brushes in your splash screen, okay, that come from Pro, like the Esri _gray and that kind of thing, okay? Start page. Your start page is a user control and view model pair. We use MVVM, okay? Your start page is shown once Pro has completed its initialization. And it's shown only once. It's shown right at the beginning. And if you choose to override the start page, then you take responsibility for initiating the session. The way you initiate the session is you either open or create a project. You don't have to worry about closing your start page. Pro's going to take care of that for you automatically. Now, at 1.4, we have 2 new themes, dark and high contrast. So if you do customize the start page, then ideally you actually support all the 3 themes, light, dark, and high contrast. By the time your start page is called, the Pro resources have been loaded, so you can style it using the Esri styles, brushes, and colors. Not a problem for your start page. And here we're showing how to override the on-show start page. This code, it's a straight copy and paste out of the configuration manager class after the template is run. So this is actually, for the most part, automatically generated for you. And we'll be tweaking it in the demo. You can see I've got my start page view model, the start page, I return the page to framework. And then somewhere else, the user is, from my start page, selecting the name of a project to be opened. And so I'm initiating the session here by opening that project. About page, application name, and icon. So the application name and icon, they're actually showed on the title bar of Pro. This is my application name. This is my custom icon. Simply override that particular property in the configuration manager. We'll see that. My about page is another user control, and then that about information, it's injected into the about page of Backstage, on the Backstage of Pro, if I choose to implement it. I want to introduce some sort of functionality relevant to the workflow my configuration implements. This is just standard add-in at this point. I'm using the ArcGIS Pro SDK templates for like button and tool and split button and all that sort of stuff, dock pane, whatever. Just run those just like you would an add-in. It modifies the config.daml, gives you the code behind, so no drama there. And we'll show all of this. I think in some regards the code is more helpful, but you kind of need some of the background too, I think. All right, let me see if I hit my escape key, if it doesn't switch the monitor. Okay, good. So let's go to Visual Studio, and I've run that template, okay? The configuration manager template. And you see here that I've already added in to my configuration some of the user interface that I need to use, okay? In this case, for our geocoding workflow, I've got this little user control here. It's got a text box. We'll type in our address or parcel number or whatever. And then when I push this go button here, it's going to execute the geocode. In the code behind, I've got some properties here. Like I got a little help string, says, who's logged in, what they need to do. I have this address property. It's a WPF dependency property, so I want to bind to it. I've got this geocode address command that will be executed when I push that find location button, and it's going to execute my geocode address method. In the geocode address method, this is where I'm responsible for starting that session. If I don't have a project open, I'm going to open one, and then I'm going to zoom and center the map on the geocoded location. If a project is already open, then I'm just going to simply zoom and center the map, and then I'll close, if Backstage is open, I'll close that, okay? The rest of the code is just the implementation of a geocoder against online. It's not really that important. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we hook the start page and all that up to Pro in our configuration. I'm going to the configuration manager class, okay? And here's that stubbed out onShow start page. I'm going to change it to be my geocode start page, which you can sort of see over there. Oh, one thing, let me go back. The start page. In the start page, yeah, this is my user control. You can see that I've cited that geocode user control. I've added like my company name, some kind of branding and color scheme. And then in the XAML, this is that geocode control. I've actually cited it on that start page. So I've just got two user controls going here. One is this little geocode user control, and then the other is this start page that I'm actually hosting that control on, okay? And then here's my about page, where I've added like what version of the geocode configuration this is, and my company name, and that kind of thing. Okay, back to Configuration Manager. I got a little ahead of myself there. Okay, so I want to change this to be my geocode start page view model. Okay, and I have to change this member variable 2, and then this is my geocode start page. And that's really all I got to do to change, that code that the template gave me. And then I'm returning that page to Framework. In the splash screen, if I want to change the splash screen, I change this to be my custom splash screen. I'm just going to use the one the template gives me out of the box. Maybe what I'll do is I'll go in there and I'll change the name. I'll show my corporation name, for example. But you can get as sophisticated in that as you want. And then I'm going to show my geocode about page. Okay, like that. So pretty straightforward. I'm taking my custom content, I'm overriding the respective method in the configuration manager to return it to Pro. The other thing I want to do is I want to add in some custom functionality for my workflow. And to do that, I'm just going to use the Pro SDK templates, okay? And in this case, I'm just going to add in a button, kind of representative of the custom functionality. And this is just like an add-in, okay? I add it, I get the on-click, and then whatever the functionality is, I'm just going to show a message box. Kind of placeholder, really. It's not important what the button does. Okay. In the config.daml, we see that the template, there it is, generated my button. And it also puts in this appears on add-in tab. We don't want the add-in tab. I'm just going to delete that off. And the other thing the SDK template does is it stubs out this tab for me, and I want to use that. So I'm just going to uncomment this. And I'm going to change the tab caption to custom. Okay? All right, so we've got our, and space is kind of at a premium here on these displays, but I've got my custom about page, start page, hosting my geocode user control, and this will initiate the session. I modified the splash screen, okay, and added in our corporation name. I used the SDK templates to add a custom button and also a custom tab that will contain that button. In the configuration manager, out of the box, I also get an implementation, like of the icon and application name, and I'm just leaving those as is from the template. Let's build it and run it. Okay. Pro starts. There's our custom splash. And here comes our custom start page. Here's our geocode user control, my branding and so forth. I go to the backstage, the about, and there's my custom about page user control added into the about page of Pro. Okay, let's go back to the start page. I'm just going to take the default 380 New York Street, fine. Pro starts. We geocode centers the map. Notice here on the ribbon is my custom tab with my custom workflow functionality. Okay? Pretty straightforward. All right, so let's say that for our purposes, we're going to provide on our custom tab all of the functionality that our users need to complete their workflow. Okay? And that what we want to do is we want to remove all of the other functionality from the ribbon. In fact, not just the tabs that you can see, but the hidden, contextual tabs as well, the whole smash. Additionally, when we go to the backstage, we notice that the stock, new, and open backstage tabs are currently visible. And that doesn't fit in with our geocoding paradigm, because when our users execute Pro, they always work with addresses or parcel numbers or whatnot. So whenever they open a new project, we want a special Backstage tab to reflect that same startup page behavior. So we want to take care of that. Last is we want to kind of close out any back doors where if we take something off the Pro UI, we don't want them to be able to add it back in. And so we want to remove this customize the ribbon option, okay? So we want to remove that as well, okay? So let's see how to go about doing all that, okay? All right, I'm just going to go back to the PowerPoint then, and let's sort of step through that step by step, and then let's just do it in the code, okay? Okay, so customizing the Backstage and then customizing the UI to streamline available functions and tabs. Customizing the Backstage, that's just using straight up SDK templates, add in a Backstage tab, customize it, and so on and so forth. We'll see how to do that. And then customizing the UI. So this is interesting, right? This is not something that we typically do with add-ins, is that level of streamlining or kind of change. It actually is possible to strip off those tabs in an add-in. DAML is transactional. That means you can insert, update, or delete elements to include tabs. So actually, if I wanted to put it in my DAML, I could actually add a bunch of delete tab statements for all the tabs. I'd have to know what all the tabs are. I'd have to know all of the modules that the tabs are in. But I could conceivably do it. However, what I'd much rather do is I'd much rather do that in code, okay? And I'd much rather have some sort of more straightforward mechanism to do that. And we'll see this override on update database. So on update database, this is an override that comes with the configuration manager. And the way it works is this. When Pro starts up, it queries all of the extensions and all of the add-ins that you have installed on your system. And it queries them for their respective UI XML definitions, okay? It takes all of those XML definitions and consolidates them into a single XML database. That database with the entire consolidated UI is passed to you as the parameter to this method. And here in this code, what I'm doing is I'm reaching into that database, I'm selecting out of it all of the tabs, and then in this loop, any of those tabs that interest me, that I'm interested in, I'm adding to this collection, and then from that collection, I'm deleting them. So any tab that I collect in this little collection here, I'm deleting, okay? And then we're gonna see some examples of this. Okay, let's go back to Visual Studio. All right, so the first thing we want to do is we want to add in our custom Backstage tab. So I'm going to go add, I go to my SDK templates, I want a new Backstage tab, I'm going to add it. And here's our Backstage tab. Okay, onto this guy, I am going to add my geocode UI user control, okay? It has an address property, and I'm going to bind to that an address property from my Backstage view model, which I have yet to add, okay? All right. Let's go to the view model of my Backstage tab. Out of the box, it gives me this heading. Let's change that to be geocode. And then I'm just going to use this property here with a little copy-paste inheritance. to be the basis of my address property that I need for user control. I'm just going to give it some default. And then I need to change this name to address. The rest of it is really just fixing the copy-paste baggage. Okay, so that's my Backstage tab, right? Let's go into the config.daml. All right, you'll notice when I run the template, I get this new Backstage element added into my config.daml. When you add something into the Backstage, you actually get a button and a tab. Not everything on the Backstage is a tab. There are buttons, such as like save and exit. I don't need a button, so I'm just going to delete it. And in this case, I'm just going to change the caption of my Backstage tab to be geocode. And then by default, your Backstage tabs get added right at the bottom above the exit. I'm just going to change that. I want to be placed above the save button. Okay. All right, so that's that. Okay. Next thing I want to do is I want to take care of that customize the ribbon, okay? And actually the way I do that is also in DAML. The configuration manager has a number of attributes, and one of those is block customize dialog. And I'm going to set that equal to true. That will block the customized dialog from the UI, okay? Let's see. Block, customize, drawing a blank. Right, let's just build that. Oh, ribbon. Okay, customize the ribbon. Let's go to the configuration manager. And we want this OnUpdate database callback. Now I've already stubbed out the code for it here. Okay, just try and format this so you can see it. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to uncomment it, and then we'll run it in the debugger, and I'll explain what's going on as it's running. Okay, let's just put a breakpoint in there. I'm trying to just get maximum amount of size right there. Okay. We'll rebuild. And let's run it. Okay, splash, then we get our OnUpdate database. Now notice, here is that XML database, and if we look at this guy, we can see in it the entire XML definition of our UI. So these are all the property pages, conditions, we got buttons, menus, buttons, tooltips, edit boxes, galleries, it's all in there, the entire Pro UI, okay? So that's passed to us in this OnUpdate database, and from that, I am selecting all of the tabs, and we see that here, okay? Within this loop, I'm going to do a couple of things. The first thing is I want to find my own tabs. That's this code right here. And if I find my tabs, I don't want to do anything. I want to leave them alone. If a tab is on the Backstage, and it happens to be the new project or open project tab, I want to add it into this collection, and then I'm going to delete all the tabs out of that collection at the conclusion of this loop. And of course, any of the other tabs, I want to delete those as well. And that's happening right down here, okay? I know it's a little bit difficult to see because of the size of the projection screen. Okay, so let's just set a couple of breakpoints, so kind of give us an idea of what's going on. All right, let's run it. Okay, so this is my new project backstage tab. I'm adding it into that collection. I want it to be deleted. There's my open. Okay, let's keep running. This is probably one of my tabs. Yeah, this is my backstage tab that I just added. I don't want to do anything to that. This is my other tab, my custom workflow tab. I definitely don't want to do anything with that. You know, what are some of the other tabs I'm deleting? This is like the metadata tab, open table tab, I mean, whatever they are. Some 99 in total. So in my setup, with this configuration, the add-ins that I have installed, I've got 99 tabs that I'm going to delete, okay, off the Pro UI. Splash, we get a start, same as before. I'm just going to accept the default location. Notice now a totally streamlined, stripped UI. I've whacked all the tabs. Not only the ones that were visible, but the hidden contextual tabs as well. They're all gone. I go to Backstage. Now I've got my custom geocoding experience. I've got rid of the new and open, and I've sort of like put that same geocoding metaphor onto Backstage. So now, once my users are working in that location, and they go to the next location, boom, they just initiate, you know, that geocode, and so on and so forth. They do their work, whatever that work is. They go back to the Backstage, the next address, and so on, okay? Last, I go to the options, and then notice the customize the ribbon is gone. I pulled that off, okay? All right. Now what we want to do is we want to take that same configuration, but we want to customize the UI differently depending on who's logged in. So per user, we want to customize the UI, okay? So let's take a look at that. I'll go back to my slides. All right. So bottom line is we want to conditionally customize the UI based on some aspect of the logged on user. Maybe their Active Directory role, could be something to do with portal, for example, their group membership, and that's what we're going to show. But it could be any aspect. Whatever that aspect is, you want to conditionally customize the UI. All right. First, let's just take a step back and let's take a second to talk about the startup sequence of Pro. As a configuration, you are invoked super early on in the life cycle of Pro. And because of that, depending on a particular callback, it may or may not, you know, be safe to do particular things. For example, when do you know that the module that contains the portal has actually been loaded, okay? And so to tell you when it's safe to do particular things, we provide you two callbacks. The first is on application initializing. When you get on application initializing, it tells you that you can now call the portal. And that's what I'm showing in this little code snippet here. I've got the on application initializing callback. I'm calling portal. You know, I'm getting my active portal. I'm signing in. I'm getting the username. And then in this particular case, I'm querying that portal for, you know, the list of groups for this particular user, okay? The other callback is on application ready. You will get on application ready right after your start page callback has been called, okay? Once the application is ready, it is safe to call any aspect of the API. The states never go back. So once the application is ready, it's always ready. It's ready for the entire session, okay? It never goes back to initializing or pre-initializing, okay? It's a one-way ticket. Once it's ready, it's always ready. Okay, so with that in mind, let's look at the two callbacks we have available to us for that conditional customization. First is OnCreateDaml. We've already got our OnApplication initializing, so it's safe to call the portal here. We're good, right? And here in OnCreateDaml, we can actually return an alternate DAML string to replace what has been read from the config.daml that's stored with our configuration. So let's just say, for sake of argument, we've made 5 DAML files. And in each of those 5, we put some different set of tabs and feature functionality, like some for parcels, I don't know, some for assessment, whatever your workflow is, okay? The user logs in, and depending on some characteristic of that user, we want to switch out the DAML that's being returned. In this particular case, I'm just showing sort of some pseudocode where I've got some kind of service, some web service. I have the username and then some name of the configuration, and I'm streaming back to the client a config.daml that I'm returning to Pro. It could be being read from a database, it could be stored on disk, it doesn't really matter, okay? So OnCreateDaml is ideal for adding functionality conditionally. Like when you have, again, you know, some set of tabs predefined, and it's a different set for each individual user. The other callback we've already seen, that's OnUpdate database, and this is kind of like the workhorse of the configuration. Here, we're past the complete DAML, and so we got free reign to add, delete, modify any aspect of Pro functionality. OnApplication initializing has been called by the time we get OnUpdate database, so we can use the portal. The other type of customization is different. It's something called a command filter. A command filter occurs after application ready. So it's actually once a session is running. And a command filter gives you a really, really discrete mechanism for disabling either a whole swath of commands or even an individual command. There are 2 callbacks. One is on can execute, and then the other is on execute. On can execute is called on the message pump of Pro. So it's called like about every 10 or 20 milliseconds. And the DAML ID of every single command is passed through on can execute command. You can evaluate that ID and make a determination if that command can be enabled or disabled. If it's disabled, you just return false. Because it's on the refresh cycle of Pro, it needs to be super lightweight, nothing heavy. Don't call a database, don't call a web service. Really, if you've got some kind of class member variable where you've stashed the permissions like can edit or something, that kind of thing is perfect for on can execute. If you've got some heavyweight functionality, like you need to query a database or something, then that's on execute command. In on execute command, when the user physically clicks on a button on the ribbon, then you are called first. You're told the command that that user wants to execute. Query your database, whatever it is that you need to do to determine if that user can execute the command. It could even be spatial. Maybe there is, you know, some particular map extent or area, and that user cannot do that action in that area. And so you're going to do some kind of overlay thing. This is perfect for a command filter, okay? And we'll show you some examples of that in the demo. With that, Steve, I'll turn it over to you, and he's going to show us some of this conditional customization capability.
All right, as Charlie said, we want to take a look at how we can use configurations to control the application, in this case based on roles. And we're going to use portal group membership for our roles, but as Charlie said, you could use Windows Identity or what have you. Again, we're going to have one configuration, but it's going to change the user experience depending on the user signed into portal. First, let me show you our portal connection, and you'll see that we have two users. One is called Demo Pro SDK, and the other Demo Pro SDK 2. And there's two groups. So there's a for viewing group, and there's a for editing group. And one of our users is in both groups, but the other user is just a viewer. So what we want to do is not allow viewers to edit. And let's take a look at what that looks like. So we have a custom splash screen. We come in, we need to sign in. This is Demo Pro SDK.
Is it Demo? Is it Demo Pro SDK?
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Demo
Underscore.
Pro SDK. Shoot your fingers here. This is right? 3, 8, 0. And we're in. And this is the same app that Charlie developed over the course of the presentation. Oh, and right away we'll see that this guy has an edit tab. He's right here. But let's log off and re-sign in as our second user. Underscore Pro SDK 2. So different user coming in now. And I forgot to mention, I got a little ahead of myself, on our landing page or our start page, we're showing the role. So this is a viewer role. So we've already at this point detected that Demo SDK 2 is only a viewer, and so we've configured even our start page to prepare for that. And when we come into the app, you'll see we've stripped off the editing tab in exactly the fashion that Charlie showed in his demo. All right. Let's take a look at the source code on how we pulled this off. Now the main player here is on application initializing. And as Charlie pointed out, this is the first time it is safe to call out to the portal. And we've added a function here called getPortalMembership that asks the user to sign on, and then it returns the groups that user is a member of. And in our case, we're looking for the for editing group, and if they're in that group, we set a flag to signal that. Later, as the app starts up, we'll move on to OnUpdate database, which Charlie showed, and we're going to use that flag now to say, oh, if you're an editor, then let's tweak the tabs keep the editing tab, but if you're not an editor, pull it off the ribbon. And so let me run that through the debugger here, show you guys. So we'll get our on application initializing, call into portal. Right away I can see I'm only a member of one group, and that's the for viewing group. So we'll F5 down to OnUpdate database. we'll land down here. This guy is not an editor, so we're going to add that to our list of tabs that we want to pull off, and then we'll just keep going. Right, and that's that, and that's it. Next, we want to show the command filters that Charlie mentioned. So we have on-can execute, and again, this is called before a command is clicked. So in the message pump, and as Charlie said, you definitely want to be lightweight. So we're going to just simply return our Boolean flag here. Like if you're in this case, say we want to disable a command if you're not an editor. So we're just going to immediately return our bool. No heavy work here whatsoever. And we're just going to look, okay, if the command ID starts with Esri_editing, and if you look at the editing extensions DAML file, you'll see that all of their commands start with the sequence. So we can easily shut down all these commands, so they'll just be permanently disabled in the ribbon. And lastly, we have on execute command. And again, this is called once a user physically clicks the button or the tool in the ribbon. And this gives you a shot at injecting some runtime logic. Whoops, I lost the mic. Some runtime logic that is more heavy. And I think that wraps us up.
Okay, you want to just
flip you back?
Flip me back, Steve?
Okay, and so some resources that are available to you online on our GitHub site. We have some reference material, our configurations concepts that walks through all of the callbacks, the sequence of the callbacks, what you can do in the callbacks. In the configurations guide, it's a step-by-step how to actually write a configuration, you put it together, and then we have some samples that are also available online you can download and play with. And with that, I'll open it to any questions. Yes, sir.
Yeah, well, we were in this example, we were using a for each loop, and it's illegal to modify a collection in a for each loop. That'll throw an exception. So to get around that, we just dump them into a second collection, and then.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Can you somehow prevent that a user who has limited user interface that can start
Sorry, I'm going to come closer.
You can limit the user interface as much as you want.
Yes.
So, for example, not allow someone to edit, but he still has a full Pro installation, right?
Yes.
You can always start.
That's right.
So any solution, hint how to do this?
You mean physically remove that code?
Preventing a certain user to start perhaps without the command line configuration. So, I mean, you can do this via Windows, I guess, not allowing to execute this application.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a very important use case.
mm-hmm.
Yes, you want to take away editing.
Not through the Pro SDK. That would strictly be through Windows. Yeah, we kind of sort of draw our line of responsibility at what we provide in the API. But I mean, I get your point. But no, we don't have a installation switch that says if Pro is not run with this configuration, just, you know, stop. I don't know, what do you think, Steve?
Yeah, well, the only thing that came to mind that perhaps we didn't mention is there's another override for the ability to
Licensing.
validate licenses. So this is one of the first functions, this is one of the first callbacks. And here, if you want to perform any custom license checking, you can do that. And if you return false, the app will just immediately shut down.
Yeah, I think he wanted something a little different though, but.
Yeah, this was a little bit outside.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, we have some business cards up here if you guys want to come up and get them.